So thank you, Megan. Thanks, Paul, we got an email this morning from Paul just kind of welcoming us, letting us know that the coffee was brewing and that we had a space here that was for us. And I think that it's those little things that are really, really important. And ultimately, regardless of the size of our organizations, what we're going to find out the next 2 months is that this is going to be a journey of moments. I'm reading a book. I don't know if anybody's read the book, The Power of Moments. But in it, they give this story, and it's a great example of how we, regardless of the resources we have, can do things that are really special. But the one story that I absolutely love, there's this hotel in LA, which is actually the highest ranked or rated hotel in LA, and it's not one that you would think. It's not the Four Seasons or the Ritz or anything. It's in fact a really small hotel. It used to be a Motel 8, right? To show you but they do just a couple things there that make it special for people. So one is they have this red phone. And when you go outside to the pool, if you pick up this red phone, it's the popsicle phone, right? So when you pick up this phone, somebody answers it, and it's the popsicle hotline, and you can order any flavor of popsicle that you want. And that popsicle gets delivered on a silver platter with someone with white gloves, and you get your popsicle. It's a family-friendly place, and so you kind of remember this, but it's actually, this is kind of important, but what they do when things go bad is actually what's made them famous. So one story that they give is a family was there, one of their children left their teddy bear. And so the family flies across the country back home to the East Coast. They call, and the father says, "My son cannot sleep. He left his teddy bear in the hotel room. Could you just send it back to us?" And they said, "Sure, we'll send it back." And so 2 days later, they got the teddy bear back. But it wasn't just the teddy bear. They got with it a photo album of that teddy bear where they had gone around the premises of the property. And so they put the teddy bear up at the bar, and they took a picture at the bar. They take the teddy bear out to the golf course, and so all of a sudden, and then with a little note that just said, "John, your teddy bear has been in good hands. He just wanted to stay a couple extra days. Thanks for letting us borrow it." Right? And that's a story that everyone is going to tell. And so I want to kind of start this and get a little bit of feedback from you guys before I go too deep. But I want all of us to understand that there are going to be a lot of these opportunities for us where something might not go the way that we want it to go or the way that other people want it to go. But we always have a chance to kind of write the last chapter like that did. So by show of hands, how many people in the room have a graphic designer or some form of design team on their staff? Okay, so a couple, all right. By a show of hands, how many people in this room have an organization that has a budget over $1 million? Okay, so a good amount of people in the room. Has anybody in here participated in the Extra Give in Lancaster? Okay, so a couple people. Cool, so that's good. So when I was talking with Megan, I said that this environment is conducive to us kind of standing up here and talking about how great we are and all the good things that we do, which would be a total lie, first of all, but second of all, I don't think that you guys would get a lot from it. And so what I really hope is that throughout this, if something just doesn't sit right, it'll be a little bit clunky if that's okay, but I want to make sure that we kind of go places that will add the most value to you all. Cool. So just a quick outline, a brief overview as far as Children's Every Chance is concerned. I think it's just important the lens that we speak through. And so to add some context from that, a little bit of Extra Give history as it relates to us. Thanks so much. And then just really straightforward kind of preparation, day of, follow-up, just some things that we think might be useful. So when Darryl Daniel dropped me off at the University of Maryland, he just asked me one thing. He said, "Just promise me you'll do it for someone else." Right? And that always stuck with me. And then somebody else told me that you should teach something shortly after you learned it, while you still remember what it's like to not know it. You should teach something after you learned it, while you still remember what it's like to not know it. And there's so many reasons why, right? But one thing is that you still remember all of the insecurities. You still remember all of the unknowns. You still remember the exact process that you went through in order to accomplish something. So those two things really stood out to me from the time that Darryl dropped me off at the University of Maryland, and then beyond that. And so ultimately what that led us to was starting the Children Deserve a Chance Foundation in 2008, 2009-ish. And really the idea was just to work with students who I saw myself in. And what I mean by saw myself in was somebody who maybe had a teenage mother, maybe grew up with in a single parent home, maybe grew up in poverty, maybe was going to be the first person in their family to kind of go down the road to college. And we knew that we didn't know much, but we were going to learn by doing. And so we really spent 2008 until 2012, 2013, just kind of figuring out. And I think like all of us in this room, right, our conscious, we have a social conscious. We want to do better for other people, for ourselves, for our families. But the thing that's always weighing on us is do more, do more, do more. And so in 2012, 2013, it actually became really clear to us that we just had to stop doing that. And we had to go deep in something, and we had to stand for something. And so ultimately we arrived at a couple of things. There was a couple insights we gained. So first of all, the name Children Deserve a Chance is amazing if you're trying to raise money. It's terrible if you're trying to recruit an 11th grade male at McCaskey High School, right? And so we realized that we needed to, not ideally, but we had a kind of a community-facing nonprofit, and then we had a student and family-facing initiative, and that's what ATTOLLO is. So there are some students of ours who have no idea what Children Deserve a Chance is. And there are some supporters of ours who aren't quite sure what ATTOLLO is. And so that's something that we're constantly having to work together. But ATTOLLO is a college access program for juniors and seniors in high school, many of which are going to be the first in their family to go to college, many of which are low income, many of which are students of color. And in Lancaster, and I think in all of our communities, this is a demographic that tends to be under-resourced and in many cases underserved. And we just felt that we could be the best in the world at that. Our team was built of a bunch of people who had walked that walk before. We remembered what it felt like not to know. And so ATTOLLO has been kind of the thing that we've been working on for the last several years. And it's been an amazing, amazing experience. So once we figured out what we wanted to do, we then decided that it was time for us to kind of lift our heads up and go out into the community. And the timing was perfect for this because it was actually the first year of the Extraordinary Gift. And so we obviously needed the resources, but we also wanted to make more connections. And I'm sure that a lot of those things are similar to why Give Local is so exciting to all of you. I was talking with Mark, right, earlier, and he was just saying that some of you have watched this happen in Lancaster and have been saying, well, why aren't we doing this, right? And so one of the objectives that I have today is like, how can we build, or how can you guys build off what's already been done and borrow whatever best practices may be best for you. So for us, the first year of the Extraordinary Give was actually something that we decided we were going to do at 6 a.m. the Thursday before it started. So it was starting at midnight that night at 6 a.m. We were like, you know, we should try this. So everybody in this room is way ahead of where we were at as far as the Extra Give was concerned. It first started, I think it was 2012 in Lancaster. And at that time, we maybe had, and Megan, you probably know this better than me, but was it around 200 or less?
Yeah, just under 200.
Yeah, so we had just under 200 organizations. And that year, I believe we surpassed just over $1.5 million in revenue that year. And we have an image that I think we can get up here. So we surpassed 1.5 million in revenue, and it was an amazing event. Everybody left that day saying, wow, this was really good, but we all could be better. And so for us, as an organization that day, I think we had 546 donors, something like that, and raised about $59,000. Yeah, so 572 donors, and we raised $59,000. And so to kind of fast forward to this past year, there were 464 nonprofits that were in it in Lancaster this past year. Total money raised was $8.6 million. We were so blessed. We had 2,199 people support us on that day. We raised $389,000 on the day of the Extraordinary Give. So it's been a really, really good event, not only for us, but for the community as well, right? So we can go to the next one. So, as I talked about, some stories, some insights, some strategies, but I know we have 90 minutes allotted, but I want to kind of hopefully use the majority of the time for questions. So we're going to kind of fly through these. So why give local? And as I was kind of thinking about this as a neutral party for this, obviously as a community, you have an opportunity to get everyone involved, something that's positive and uplifting. But I think the real value add is for your organizations, right? It's a way to rally kind of your stakeholders in a friendly competition. It can provide exposure for some less known organizations. At the time that we initially did the Extraordinary Give, we had 3 full-time staff, and maybe we're serving 40 or 50 students at the time, a board of directors of 3. So we were a really small organization. So it was this platform for us to kind of make a name for ourselves, right? And so I definitely think that there are probably some people in this room, and if I had a bet, who will end up doing really, really well, and see this as the opportunity for you to kind of make a name for yourself in this community. And that certainly was the case for us. And then I think it's just an opportunity to get out and talk to more donors and supporters. So before you get started, the one thing that I think is so important is the map is pointless if you don't know where you're at on it, right? So this internal self-audit of your organizations, I think, are essential and something that we start with, and we spend a lot longer than I think anybody else does at this stage of things. And it's kind of assessing, all right, how big are we as an organization? Who are our largest donors today? And not just who are they, but like, what are their interests? What are the things that excite them? What's our largest fundraiser been to date as an organization, right? And all of these things, I think, help to give you the initial tools that you may have and just an initial understanding of where you are. And then from there, you can kind of build your strategy and a strategy that will make sense. And then lastly, obviously, who is the team that you have? So the Extra Give for us, every year we've pretty much had a different team of staff for the Extraordinary Give. And it's just been amazing how, we talk about all the time, courage doesn't come necessarily from deep down inside, right? Courage comes from the people who are around you and how they make you feel. And so the one thing that I've always been so blessed with is that I've just always felt really strong because of the people who are around me. And I'm sure that that's not a feeling that's just specific to me, right? So understanding who your team is becomes really important. The other thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is the difference between marketing versus manipulation, okay? May 4th is gonna come and go. And if you're a good marketer, that's gonna be amazing. If you manipulate, that's not gonna be so amazing. And so the difference between a marketer, a great marketer, and a manipulator is how people feel after they did what you wanted them to do. So how your team feels after they go along with this strategy that you hopefully collectively put together. How your donor feels when they make that contribution on May 4th based upon the things that you told them and how it actually plays out, right? And so this internal audit that we just mentioned becomes really important because at the end of this, you want everybody to feel like, all right, they pushed me a little bit. They pushed me a little bit, but I feel good with what the outcome was. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, unless there's anything that's kind of been added recently, you're all kind of going to set a goal as to how much money you want to raise and the number of donors that you're going to get. And again, kind of going back to the kind of internal audit, that should be determined based upon like who your organization is. There are some organizations that are just built to be able to reach a lot of people. There are some organizations that may not have as big of a network, but they can receive kind of some larger contributions. And I think that becomes really important. And the numbers that you arrive at, you shouldn't do alone. So the biggest piece of advice is you want to get people involved in this process as early as possible. Right? So this isn't a top-down type of thing. So when we arrive at what our goals are going to be for the year, it's because my teams told me what they think. It's because our board, some of our board members have told us, some of our larger supporters have told us. And this process early on it takes a little bit more time, it's not efficient, but in the long run, you have more people who are totally sold on what the vision is. So, some of the things from a strategy standpoint, I just mentioned one that's not on here, but it's be inefficient. be inefficient. And what I mean by that is like, there's just going to be all of this pressure that you're going to put on yourselves and that others are going to put on you to just try to do this in the most efficient way. Get as many emails out as possible. We'll send that big group message. We'll send that mass text message. We'll do all of these things that are going to be really, really efficient, but they're not going to be sticky. And especially early on, the depth is so important. And so we kind of create this little booklet, which we probably have around here somewhere. And so this is a booklet because we understand that there's two types of communication that's taking place, right? There's internal communication to all of our stakeholders, and then those stakeholders are hopefully going to take that communication and communicate it to the external supporters. And so this is just a really rough version of it, and you can look at it afterwards. But when we go through this book, we have hourly breakdown from our history, a whole bunch of data on like our strategy and whatnot. But when we go through this, the efficient thing to do would be get 20 people in the room who said they want to help and tell them the thing. But what do? We invite them in one by one. And every single time we try to tell it with more enthusiasm than we told it the last time. There's nothing efficient about that. But when someone knows that you took the time to sit down with them and they sense that you have another 10 meetings to go, probably the same thing, but you took the time to spend it with them, they're just going to do more. And so that's one example of what it means to be efficient. Simplicity. Our campaigns are straightforward. I'm grateful. I am grateful. You get with that or you don't, right? It's easy, and you can take that where you want to take it. You're grateful for what?
For my family.
For your family. You're grateful for what?
For my 8-year-old daughter as well.
8-year-old daughter. Family is big. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my fiance.
Grateful for your fiance, so family is a big thing. What are you grateful for, sir?
My health.
Your health. Your health, right? Mark?
My first thought was my son getting his master's and he's working for the Washington Redskins.
Wow, pretty cool, pretty cool.
Every second.
So all of a sudden, this is a campaign that people can own themselves. And in one of the photos that we'll show, we kind of have this little makeshift board outside of our office, and people just kind of went by and they wrote what they were grateful for. But simplicity to this campaign, I think, is really, really important because it's going to have to be conveyed. And the tendency is to want to do more and more and more and more, and it gets diluted, and at some point people just stop spreading the word. The other thing is I think it needs to be, your strategy should evolve. So we always say trust but verify, right? So we are going to have a bunch of well-intentioned people who life is going to happen to them. And they're going to say, yeah, I can go out and do this. And what we tend to do is we just kind of trust it at that, and then it comes down to the day before and like, yeah, I had all of these things going on, right? And they're all legitimate reasons. So we say trust but verify. And so if our initial strategy says that we're going to have 15 people who believe that they can get 100 donors through their network of friends and family and coworkers, we're going to kind of audit that, right? And we'll do some things along the way for them to take steps towards that goal, but it's also a way for us to verify that, all right, the strategy is going as planned. And inevitably it won't, but we'll start to realize that, okay, we don't have 15, but we've actually got, another 30 people who are saying 50 people is something I can actually do, and they've already made action towards that. Okay, so we kind of start to iterate a little bit. And I think that is really important. So kind of keep your eyes open. The initial plan should be really simple, and you should be able to build on it as time goes. Everyone should be able to play. And so for us, when we look back at the Extraordinary Give, I think of everyone from Dana and a couple of other people on our team who just went above and beyond, right? 200 plus people they got to contribute, some large contributions. But I also love the fact that our strategy was so good that Dion could participate. So Dion was someone, our strategy is always we go 24 hours. We're going to go 24 hours, and if nothing else, we're going to put the time in. So about 3 o'clock in the morning of the Extra Give, by this time, the initial rush is over with, and everyone is tired, and we're just kind of sowing seeds for the next day. We're reminding people the day is here, we're following up, we're on social media if anyone is up. And so it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. We try to keep the energy up. So when you get a donation, you know, someone says, I got one, and we kind of try to muster up some cheers at that time. But Dion was somebody who I didn't know at the time, but I just kind of saw him across the room, and he was getting them. Got one. And every once in a while he would kind of leave and come back. And it was interesting because as the sun started to rise, I remember hearing Dion say, all right, I'm about to leave. And at that time I heard someone look over and say, Dion, how have you been getting these donations? You don't have a phone or a computer. And we kind of looked up, and he was like, I was getting spiritual donations for you guys, right? And we're like, okay. And what we realized is that we had cracked our door, and Dion was a homeless guy. And Dion kind of found his way in and assessed the situation, and he knew enough to like get in where he fit in, right? And so Dion leaves. And so it was like 8:30 in the morning, and somebody showed up, and we were really rocking and rolling at that point. And somebody said, you guys are killing it. You even got Dion on the airways. I was like, what? So when Dion was leaving, he was using our internal phone to call the prayer hotlines to get donations for us, right? And so it's just a silly example, but I think the strategy has to be so simple that the people who've been with you for years can do it, but Dion's can do it as well, right? And then lastly on this, I think you start close to home. So kind of back to this internal thing is we're not going to ask anyone to do anything that we aren't going to do ourselves, right? And so as this relates to money, there are 3 types of gifts that someone can give. Most of us in this room know these gifts, right? So it's a trivial gift, it's a meaningful gift, or it's a transformational gift, okay? And a trivial gift is quite simply the way that you check if it's a trivial gift is if someone can give this to you and forget that they gave it to you, right? For all of us, that's a different level of money. A meaningful gift is that if someone gives it to you, they know they gave it to you. They may have to kind of cut back on something for a week or so. They felt that gift a little bit. And a transformational gift is a gift where someone's sitting on the same side of the table as you, and they're kind of looking, and you're looking out together, and you decide collectively where you want to go together. And that's a transformational gift. And what I would encourage all of us to do is decide the gift that we're going to give in this. And not ask for any gifts of anyone else that is beyond that. Right? And so if you've made the decision that in Give Local you're going to give a personal transformational gift, your team is going to sense that. They're going to give it. And so I think starting close to home is really, really important with that, and understanding that those 3 types of gifts are really important. And then do the hard thing first. There's this concept of that I'm obsessing over right now, probably because I do it, but it's called virtuous procrastination, right? It's virtuous procrastination. And essentially what virtuous procrastination is we're doing something that's important, but it's not what we should be doing in that moment, right? I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. She's the most amazing thing in this world. But right now I'm here, right? And what this starts to look like as you start to roll out these campaigns is we start doing things that are meaningful, but it's everything but picking up that phone and asking for that pledge, right? It's everything but calling that board member back and saying, what can we get you in for, right? We're about to go talk to some other people, and I want to be able to authentically say that our team and our board is committed, and here's what we're going to do, right? And so doing the hard thing first, I think, is really, really important. And so another example of this is for framework, and this is totally loose, but decide kind of what your goal is, and I would encourage you to not spend any more than 10% of what that goal is as to prepare, right? So once you come up with this number, what are you going to use that money for? And so do the hard thing first for us is we kind of had known we were going to go after it this year. $389, over 400 with bonuses. So that means we have $40,000 to spend. And we figured billboards and some newspaper articles and things we were going to do. But the hard thing first is sending 1,000 personal emails first. And that unlocked us to spend the first little portion of our money. Because that's the hard thing to do. That's the inefficient thing to do. And so one by one, to every family member, start closest to home, every family member, every friend, one by one, here's what we're working on, here's the vision, here's how we think and would love if you would come beside us. One by one. Virtuous procrastination says, yeah, we're gonna do the 1,000 emails, but first we gotta buy the billboard. We're gonna do the 1,000 emails, but first we're gonna, for us, actually this year was yard signs. So we bought 250 yard signs, and we said, we're gonna put out 250 yard signs. And when we get all 250 yard signs in the ground, we'll buy a billboard. And so Leo and, and a couple of team members went out 200 yard signs in the ground, and that unlocked the billboard for us. Right? Do the hard thing first. So this is very overly simple, but you know, we think themes are good. We've had different themes, and you'll hopefully see here in a couple of photos. Yeah, everything from handouts, posters, mailers, yard signs. We did billboards and newspaper ads. We had some swag. So these were kind of all part of it. But we didn't, in year one, we didn't necessarily do all these things. In fact, we didn't do most of them. Again, kind of doing the hard thing first, it was like we could create a digital campaign and do a lot of it through emails and phone calls. And then so as the years have gone on, we have kind of added to this. So I actually would encourage you guys not to do, I think billboards are not great. For us, billboards were, we knew we were going to be relatively successful, so it made a good story. We could capture this whole day as people are donating and our numbers are going up, and there's billboards and there's yard signs and there are all these things. So the strategy behind that was a little bit different, but I definitely would encourage, start digital. It's the most effective thing to do. Is there a link on this?
Yeah.
So just have a couple of videos. We'll keep it really short, but this was, we ended up doing a video, but again, this was after like two or 3 years. We did a video. The first year we did one just on our camera phone. This is a little bit better quality, but it kind of helped us with the theme that year. So if you want to run that.
The Rubik's Cube is perceived by many as a puzzle that's impossible to complete. With only 4% of the world knowing how to solve it, there's reason behind the genius stigma that it holds. We've watched the Rubik's Cube change lives, young and old the same, providing them with an extraordinary confidence they once lacked. Take something impossible, something only for geniuses, and prove to a student that he or she can accomplish it, can be part of that 4%, and impossible suddenly has a solution. But here's the thing, there's no substitute for the open mind, the sacrifice, and the resilience that it takes, and that really any great accomplishment requires. You'll fail at least 1,000 times, and the journey will be monotonous, challenging, and exhilarating all the way. The reality of it can be overwhelming, paralyzing even. And while there are many things in life that are subjective, the Rubik's Cube is not one of them. You either do it or you don't. Scholars learn every day that what it really takes, what separates the 4% from the other 96, is catalyzed by those who are willing to simply begin making moves.
So the theme that year was making moves, and we had shirts, and the Rubik's Cube was a big piece, and we kind of went out into the community teaching the Rubik's Cube, and we had a giant sized Rubik's Cube. So that was kind of, again, a relatively simple, but making moves is different to all of us, right? And so it was another theme that we kind of knew where we wanted it to go, but it was something that people could rally around and personally relate to for whatever stage of life. What was the move that they were going to make? So that is a lot of, in fact, we have a couple of this. So that was serious, and these are a little bit more kind of lighthearted.
He has survived 2 tours in the Extra Give, raising money to send countless students to college. He is Extra Give Adam. Be prepared November 20th. He has your number on speed dial. He has survived 2 tours in the Extra Give, raising money to send countless students to college. Margaret there? I can hold. Prepare your thumbs to answer the call. Want to know what your donation will provide for our students? SAT prep, college tours, and one-on-one tutoring. So prepare for a call from me and my beard.
So a little lighter-hearted, obviously a different feel. Really a good way to get Adam involved. So Adam is famous or infamous in our community. We're not sure which one, but Adam, we literally, it took him like a couple hours to do that, but he locked himself in one of the offices and kind of came out with what were funny and engaging and just a different feel. We could send them through text or through email or what have you. So all of those things I think become really important as far as the preparation is concerned. And then as far as day of goes, there's really, I think, two types of things that you can do, right? So one is this kind of boiler room-esque, we're gonna get on the phone and we're gonna call a lot of people. The other thing that you can do is kind of do events. And totally speaking from just our observations and what's been effective for us, it was we were going to have a lot of fun throughout the day, but we were going to get donations. And so we have never done events or things like that. Every person who's kind of come through our door on the day of has been willing to give a couple of hours to get on the phone and call some people. So that's kind of been our strategy, but we certainly know others who I think through their kind of self-auditing realized or thought that, you know what, we're not going to raise a crazy amount of money, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to do something that's going to be memorable for the event. And so I know one of the organizations, this big dinosaur, was kind of just going around the city and they're a museum. And so it kind of made sense for them. And they didn't raise too much money, but it was just something that ended up in a lot of photos. And so it was a different way for them to raise awareness. And I think they had that already. So a very low cost way of doing things. You see some signage, which there's some up here as well. So the theme and some of our scholars, and once in a while we will get out in the community, but mostly it's kind of this bottom picture here, where it's just a bunch of people in, kind of calling and whatnot. So at this point, I've talked for a little bit. I have some things that I'd like to close with, but a lot of things have been said so far. Questions at this point? So for us this year, we finished with like 389,000, I think it was, and we spent, I think, 32 or 33,000 to do that. The first year we spent, I want to say we spent $1,000 the first year. So it's for us, because there's kind of this overarching construct that exists now, we see it a little bit differently, and so we're willing to invest a little bit more, and we have some supporters who we kind of know who are in, and so it's a lot more safe for us to do. But so I definitely wouldn't advise spending $35,000 this year. But I think again it goes back to what's the goal, a stretch goal for you? What's kind of 10%? That's typically a good way to decide how much you're going to spend on it.
Do you work with any other organizations that are part of the Extraordinary Give? I think that many of us in this room are here representing one organization, but are affiliated with many others. And so I'm wondering what that relationship looks like, both from the organization standpoint and from the donor standpoint.
Yeah. So one thing that I could have actually said earlier as far as the community is concerned is the one thing I know Lancaster 100% has realized is that donors are more generous on this day, right? And so they tend to support more organizations than they probably would otherwise. So for us, we actually haven't partnered with any other organizations. But we know a lot of other, again, based on what their expectation is for the day, I think there's a bunch of collaborations that take place. And some that I think the collective ends up raising more than maybe they could have done individually. But I think that also goes to kind of that self-audit, saying, all right, what resources do we have as an organization and is it best for us to kind of do this on our own or to collaborate?
When you're sending those 1,000 personal emails, what are you asking them to do at that time?
Yeah. So this is really great question. So it's different things. So we've made the decision as an organization that we're going all in on this, right? So that means that we are going to just step over the line of like we're going to really actually step over the line of being annoying. So we're going to communicate with you 7 times, and it's going to be a little bit more spaced out initially, but as we get closer, obviously it will ramp up. One thing I would advise none of you to do is don't send an email out 30 days before, the month before. Everyone does that, and it dilutes everything. So initially we're reaching out to kind of share the vision, and with no expectation of them jumping on board. The next time that we reach out to them, we're hopefully giving them some good news. This organization or this business or this individual has pledged to match our first 10 contributions that we receive at midnight of the extra give. But again, still nothing hard. And as we get closer, hopefully we've spoke to them. We've spoke to them at this point, hopefully on phone or in person, and so they kind of know what's coming. But the other part of that individual connections is just to to hopefully give something to them. So it's like acknowledging them, but again, not manipulation. So being forthright that an ask is coming or we're doing something, not like, hey, how are you? Oh, by the way, can you do this at the end of the conversation? And they get off the phone like that jerk was just calling to ask me for something. Whereas if you start the conversation, hey, I want to ask you something, but first of all, how's the family doing? You've managed their expectations from the beginning. Now it's marketing as opposed to manipulation, right? So some of those initial contacts are just kind of are touching base with these people, and we'll talk about later the benefits, some of these ancillary benefits that come through this process. But it really is good. These are some people that you wouldn't touch base with otherwise, and it ends up leading to other places.
This day falls in the middle of one of our fundraisers we've been doing year after year, and I'm wondering if you have experienced similar situations where maybe the giving day falls really close to some of your own internal fundraisers that you do as an agency, how you handle that situation.
Yeah. That hasn't been something that personally we have dealt with. What I would say, though, I know some other organizations, this has been their reality. Eventually, this day becomes more exciting than their own event. So, because a donor, they give to you, but they're also part of the total give for that day, and so they get kind of more bang for their buck. And that has just tended to be how things have played out over the past. So I'm not necessarily saying kind of cancel your event this year, but that tends to be how it's played out, at least in Lancaster so far.
If you think back to your first 2 years, was your strategy to speak with previous donors or to identify new donors? Or did you just throw the blanket out as far as the next? Yeah,
start closest to home. I mean, so our strategy was what we need is right underneath our fingertips. It's people who are close to us. It's people who we have they've been so close that sometimes we overlook them. And so the first couple of years, and to this day, I think that's been a consistent part of our strategy, is what we have is more than enough. The people who are with us are more than enough. And that has tended to hold true. And I would also say on the opposite side of it, I think people who approach it thinking that this is going to be a way to open up all of these new donors, I think it will happen if you take the first approach. But if you approach it in that way, I don't think it's as effective.
You mentioned that you communicate with people 7 times, you do that number out there, and you don't want to hit them with the big ask right at the beginning. When do you? The one before that day, how close do you get, or is when people get, people do get turned off.
Totally.
It's, it's a month away, or, whatever.
So not to kind of keep going back to this, but the difference between marketing and manipulation. So if your goal for this year is to raise, $10,000, or $20,000 or $30,000, I don't think 7 contacts is necessary, right? Like you probably, especially with all the organizations that have budgets over $1 million, you can get on the phone and get $10,000 or $20,000. It's going to be uncomfortable and whatnot. So I don't think it's necessarily as important. So what we know at the end of it is that, and I'll talk about this in a second, but in short, we know at the end of it kind of how this whole thing's going to play out. So we want you on board, obviously. We are going to be just a little bit obnoxious. But we know how it's going to end, and so when we come back and we tell you how it ended, we feel okay with that. We feel okay that we towed the line because we ended up kind of collectively doing something that's really special. I wouldn't reach out to someone 7 or 10 times and then raise $20,000 because then it's like you were begging and you weren't really good, and all of a sudden I think your brand, you tarnish your brand at that point. One more question, and I'll kind of finish this up, and then we can have a couple more questions towards the end.
Can you share what portion of the extraordinary give is of your total fundraising?
Yeah. So kind of going back, so this has become, we do 2 events a year. We do this in the fall, and we do an event at like the end of May to celebrate our seniors going off to college. So for us, it's 40%, about 40% of our budget. And usually was there one more video or no? Was that? There's one more? So let's just kind of check that one out. So very brief, obviously, but that was just kind of at midnight. And so this year we were, and one thing I will add actually real quick for this is, so there were 464 organizations in the Extra Give this year. 320 of them had 100 donors or less. And of those 320 organizations, I think their average raise was like 17,000, I think it was. And so for us, this was kind of the end. We were really close in donations, and we ended up getting some gifts at the end. So I think like 3 of our last 5 donations, one came from Usher, the singer, one came from Kevin Durant, the basketball player, and Tim Tebow. So we were very fortunate at the end to kind of have that bump, which pushed us up to number 1. So we were kind of in second place the whole day, and then these individuals kind of came through. But I think, again, also those are prime examples of like marketing versus manipulation. So we only asked those individuals once we had achieved something that we felt like was the hard work. And then we kind of asked them to close out, and they felt really good about that piece. So I think like 2 more slides, or maybe just 1 more slide. So lastly here, and this is really important. So we raised $389,000, over $400 with bonus on the day of the Extra Give. But we raised another $100,000 within 20 days of the Extra Give. So the follow-up is essential, and it's tendency for everyone to, once the day is over, just kind of they put a lot into it. But the reality of this is that on that day, so we kind of set this benchmark that we want to ask 50,000 people on that day for a contribution. But what's the reality? Some people are traveling, some people just aren't really sure what it is. Some people have things going on, etc. So inevitably, there are going to be a large portion of the people who you ask who aren't going to be able to contribute on that day. And so we really, really see the following 15 to 20 days, while it's still kind of fresh on everybody's mind, as not only ample amount of time, but as the perfect time for you to follow up. So the 4 ways that we follow up: obviously thanking people, and timely thank yous are so important. Timely thank yous are so important. And again, don't be efficient. We make hundreds of phone calls in the following days that are pointed to individuals. And again, don't be predictable. Don't just call the top 100 people who gave you a donation. There's somebody who gave you a $25 gift who that $25 gift was meaningful to them. And we make those phone calls with the same enthusiasm, with the same gratitude as we make the one, this year our largest gift was $40,000 from an individual on that day. And the same energy and the same enthusiasm better be exhibited or exuded during that. So thank yous are important. Share success, right? Winners win. People want to be associated with winners. And so the good things that are happening, share that with people. It's amazing to me that when you share successes, then all of a sudden someone just missed that text and, oh, by the way, here's a contribution. And that happens to us all of the time after we share success. If you missed this, we talked about it, just kind of assume that they just missed us on that day. And so following up. And then this last thing, write the last chapter is really important. And I talked about this earlier briefly. Inevitably through this process, you are going to hurt someone. The question we ask at the end of every evening, at the end of every event is, who do we hurt? We hurt people, right? It could be our families, right? We talk about this. There's a lot of time that you're going to put into this that you are not potentially going to be as present as you'd like to be with your family. It could be a donor who, for some reason, they couldn't contribute that day and you were just short with them and jumped off the phone to go on to the next one. It could be a volunteer, somebody who inevitably was there for you, and because they were there for you so much and you were focused on all the people who weren't, you just kind of overlooked them and you didn't express the gratitude, and kind of the day ended and the dust settled and they never got the proper recognition. So being be very deliberate about assessing who did we hurt throughout this process, and then write the last chapter, right? Go back and make it right. And that is something that is just so critical to us. So all of this is really, really easy to talk about, obviously, after it's over for us, and we've had a little bit of success in it. But the one thing that I think is really important for all of us to draw from is why we're doing this. Why we're doing this. And it seems so obvious, right? Like, you're working with your organization for a reason. The people you are serving, you've gotten to know. And what is important, I think, in embarking on anything that's challenging is you have to really build this reasons board, this why board as to why you're going to do this. Because otherwise, it'll start to get hard, or you'll start to get some rejections, or people won't be picking up the phone, and you just kind of get overwhelmed with it. But if you have like this really strong reasons as to why you're pursuing this, I think that it just helps you to kind of just keep pushing. And so we value activity more than we actually value the outcome once we have our goal. And we just trust that, like, it's just a numbers game at the end of the day. The more people you call inevitably, the higher your likelihood. And the one thing that we can convincingly tell you is that you never know. Like, you never know who the donation is going to come. Somebody who you are sure is going to contribute to you it's not going to be the right time for them. Somebody who never in a million years, you haven't spoke to them in a while, and this has been what they have been looking for, a meaningful way to get involved or a meaningful way to contribute to you. At the end of the day, people are going to give for two reasons, maybe three, hopefully three. One is because they really care and they like you. That's just the reality of it. And that's actually going to be most of your contributions. It's going to be because somebody takes an interest or a liking of you. The second thing is because they really align with your mission. And then hopefully third, it's both, right? It's that they really like you and the mission means something to them. So for me personally, this has always been easy because beyond my story, as any of our organizations grow, it obviously becomes about a lot more than you. And so for me, we have a couple of really exciting students. I think about Jade Grove and Deontay Cherry, the first two students who came through our program and ended up going. They both graduated recently, one from University of Delaware and one from American University. And I just think about the 4 years that we just, the late nights at the libraries, the sacrifices they made, the sacrifices that their mothers made, both of them having a lot of younger siblings in their family. And so I can't help but kind of put them on my whiteboard, right? I also think of Tia Gaddis. Tia's mom, in 2012, I'll never forget, she came through our doors. Our first office was about 350 square feet. We had one table in the middle of it, had 6 chairs around it. And Tia's mom came and said, I have 3 months. I have 3 months. She just promised me that my daughter will go to college, right? It's really easy to keep going, when you think about Tia Gaddis. And then for us, another why is Ethan Vaughn. So we had actually done something relatively similar the year before the Extra Give started, where we just got some people together and kind of, we called it the race against time, and we just wanted to get some donations and kind of build community. And like we always do, we start closest to home and we ask our scholars and our families. And Ethan, one of our scholars, invited his family. In fact, he invited his uncles and his aunts. They came up from Philadelphia that morning, and we had an amazing morning. And that night at 9:30, I got a phone call and said, you got to go to the hospital. And on the way home from our event, Ethan's uncle fell asleep and ran head on into a tractor trailer and died. His nephew died. Ethan was in the back seat. And at the time, they said he had a 1% chance of living. And I'll never forget, we spent 6 months in the hospital with Ethan. And Ethan not only survived, but this past December, walked across the stage of graduation, being the first in his family to go to college, right? And so when we think about people who have literally lost their lives for our mission, lost the lives so that we could serve students a little bit better, it's really, really easy to pick up that phone and risk a rejection of $25. And what I know to be true is that the people who are in this room, there are deeper meanings as to why you're doing what you're doing. It's personal, it's about the people that you serve. And my challenge to you is to make those reasons very visible, very clear to yourself. Challenge your team and your troops to build their own whys. And it won't be surprising after May 4th finishes the amount of money that you raise, but more importantly, the more good that you're able to do in your community. So with that being said, going to kind of end there. We talked about a lot of these things. We talked about those things. So with that, I'll end it and take any more questions. We have a couple more minutes, and we'll go from there.
I just briefly saw on the screen something about pledges, so you did do pledges then?
Yeah. Yep, so we got some pledges in advance, for sure.
So how did that work because of it being an online giving program that the gifts needed to be made that day?
Yeah, so it was, for us, it was mostly, here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's how you'll fit into it, and there's no way of guaranteeing it. You still have to remind them the day before and the day of, but just getting their verbal commitment was kind of the pledge. Yeah.
I'm going to be that guy and ask
No?
you a question.
Cool.
So, you mentioned, I believe, the waters a while ago, how that's something that I thought as we're going to have over 200 nonprofits out there asking people for money, and how do you prevent donor fatigue or stand out in this storm of people? Because we all have great compelling stories, huge areas. But after 100 of them, people might start to tune us all out and get frustrated.
Yeah, and that definitely will happen. So one is you just have to trust that the outcome is going to be worth it for everyone. And people forget pain if it was for a good reason. And I'm really convinced that just the amount, I know the amount of work that Megan's been putting in. I know the amount of work that some of the supporters, is Bob here? Maybe. That some people are in this community are really getting behind this. So I think the outcome will be worth it. But inevitably, yes, people are going to get a lot of phone calls. That being said, I think in Lancaster, the average donor of the Extra Give gives to 4 or 5 organizations on that day. So it's certainly worth being one of them that reaches out.
So the day of between that midnight and 6 a.m. hours, were you actually calling people or emailing them? What exactly were y'all doing?
Yeah. So yeah, all of the above. So social media, has been a big thing for us. So you can see kind of on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter who's kind of active, and so they become potential people to reach out to. And then the other thing that we're doing at that point is, so one key is we want to start really fast. So the other things that we just kind of learned throughout is, so for example, Lancaster had 51,000 unique contributions this past year. So it's 51,000 people who, the process for them is, you send them the link, they click on the link, they see the leaderboard, which is the first thing, and they click on that. So for us, there was value at being on the top of the leaderboard. So our website got 30,000 views on that day, because what do people do? You send them the link, they go, they see us at the top of the leaderboard, and they say, oh, I never heard of them before, who are they? And they click on it. So we felt that there was value at being at the top early. So we have a plan to start very fast. And then it's just all about hopefully sharing that success throughout the night. So when people wake up in the morning, it's, you guys are amazing. How have we already have 300 donors and $50,000? And kind of giving them instructions then as to how to act. So it's people who are online and then sowing seeds for the following day.
For social media, what platform did you find was most useful to share your message?
Facebook has been really good for us. And Instagram now with DMs, you can slide in DMs. Yeah, those two I would say have been the best for us. But picking up the phone is the most effective. Yeah.
Greg, can you talk a little bit about your very first year and what that day of looked like for you, and sort of your approach to that? Because I think obviously your success has been amazing. I don't know if you want to reach out, so maybe where you started.
Yeah. So we mentioned on the graph that, or on the initial chart, that the first year we had 570-ish donors, and I think it's 59 or 72,000 after the bonuses. So that first day, like I said, the morning before, we just said we had 5 of us, and we were like, we could each get 100 people. We have 24 hours to get 100 people to say yes to $25. Like that was the extent of the strategy. And then we did it. So the one thing to be aware of is Facebook will kick you off if you send too many messages like in a row that are the exact same thing. So you can't necessarily copy and paste, which I think ends up being good for you anyway. So you have to kind of have a personal touch to it. The other thing that we did is we had hourly goals. And I think that's really, I read, there's an amazing book called just Grit by Angela Duckworth. And in it, I believe that was the book, but in it, it shows like the total amount of people who've ever run marathons in the world, and the different kind of, the different times in like this graph. And it's amazing that like right before the 4-hour mark and the 5-hour mark and the 3-hour mark is where everyone is at. So goals are things that we just have a way of kind of getting to. So what we did is again, virtuous procrastination can happen and will happen throughout the day. So we felt the best way was to have these hourly goals. And they, again, it's really important picking goals, because if you're so off, like people just lose, they get discouraged. But like if you just cross over it or you're just below it, and then just kind of keep plugging throughout the day. The other thing is, and again, this is all relative to whatever your networks are or the scale of your organizations are, but as kind of the person is running this for your organization, again, you do have to motivate internally, right, as well, because they're the ones who, so typically throughout the day, I'll have at least 1 or 2 things that I know are going to happen, a celebrity gift or a big gift or a visitor, and they don't have to be over the top, but those things tend to help throughout the day as well. So hourly goals, starting fast, and then what I will tell you is the last 6 hours is where you will raise the bulk of your money. 75% of your money will come in the last 6 hours of it. And we believe that is because of all the seeds that you sow early in the day. So that is really important. So one other thing that I wanted to say really quickly, and then I'll take another question. I think we have, how are we on time? Is you never know where this is going to go. And we were reminded of this yesterday. So every summer we do a college, so just 2-second overview. Junior year of high school, you get called down to the principal's office. There are 7 people, a diverse group in suits who know your name. You're not sure why the principal just called you there, and your principal tells you you've been chosen as a cohort of 30 from your school to be a part of ATTOLLO. In order to get in, you have to come the next 6 weeks at 5:30 in the morning before school. Dreams don't work unless you do, right? You're gonna learn these core pillars, and then your final interview is gonna be solving the Rubik's Cube. You'll do it in 1 minute and 30 seconds. That will get you into ATTOLLO, and then you'll be exposed to the US. You'll go on college tours all over the country. You'll have people who are gonna advocate for you, et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, we go on our college tours this year. So this summer we went to California, Michigan, Florida, Boston, and Baltimore. And so it comes the day of the give, and one of our team members, Leo, who ran the Michigan trip, it's call everyone, like no shame in this, we're calling everyone. So Leo meets someone on the Michigan tour and calls her. And Leo's a confident guy, so Leo is sure that she's gonna remember him, of course. And she's on speakerphone, and she's like, who? What? Who are you? No, I'm not giving. But she said, but what are you doing? And she said, you need to reach out to a friend of mine who's in Pennsylvania named Elaine. Elaine runs the Millennium Scholars Program. So Leo didn't get a donation, he got a rejection, but he got a contact. Yesterday we were notified that 2, not just 1, but 2 of our scholars just received full Millennium scholarships because of that phone call. And so you don't know where this is going to go. You're gonna reach out, you're gonna sow so many seeds, and what we have learned is to kind of keep our eyes open. And so the reflection and understand that a lot of good things, you're gonna raise a lot of money on the day of, you're gonna do a lot of good for your organization, but there will be some of these ancillary benefits that inevitably will come as well. My contact is pretty straightforward. It's just Jordan, Jordan, at ATTOLLO, ATTOLLO Prep, PREP.org. So Jordan at ATTOLLOPrep.org. And I mentioned this to Megan before, that I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to do this, but we are open to working with a couple of your organizations if it's of interest. We are designers first and foremost, and this is obviously something that we care about, and we're always asking ourselves, how can we kind of expand our reach without starting things on our own? And so if any of you, and it'd probably be like three or four organizations max, but if any of you that is of interest to kind of bring us in as strategists, we promise we'll be great marketers and not manipulators. But no, I just wanted to offer that if we can help kind of optimize any of your outreach for this initial year. Cool. Thank you guys.